Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans, college basketball fans, sports fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. Yeah, usually featuring Clay Hall, but we got Bill Bender again here on a Friday because Bill Bender brings it. Bill Bender of the Sporting News fame, a Pickerington, Ohio resident, but I'm all-seeing, all-knowing across the nation and around the world, which is part of this podcast credo. Bill Bender, welcome once again to the Tim May Show.
Hey Tim, how you doing, man? Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for coming on in such a chipper mood. I think I sent you a note to say be chipper today, and you were. So and you weren't a wood chipper. You were chipper in the sense of being up. It's Final Four weekend. It's finally upon us. Ohio State's in the middle of spring drills, just passing the midway point tomorrow, sometime around 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Spring drills pass over into the midway point. I'm just trying to be a smart aleck. Spring drills, but you got to understand where I grew up in Texas, there were two sports, football and spring football. So, and then everything else emanated from that. But, Bill, thanks for coming on again, man. I want to talk to you about several different things. I want to get into the Final Four. I want to get into your pick in the Final Four, both the Final Four and then the championship game. What do they call the championship game? Just the championship game?
The national championship game at 9:18 p.m. whenever they start it. So yeah. Something they need to change, by the way. I think that they should do the semifinals on Thursday night, and then that you have a national championship game on a Saturday night instead of Monday night. But I mean, there are a lot of changes in college sports. I guess tonight we'll have the women's Final Four semifinals on Friday, and then they play their championship game on Easter Sunday, which it's fallen on Easter Sunday at least a handful of times over the years. So, I mean, I'm not going to complain either way. But if I was doing it, I would have the national championship game on a Saturday night.
All right. I want to talk to you about something that has to do with national championships, but not basketball real quick. And then we'll get into these men's semifinals, which I find intriguing in all kinds of ways because the game I want to see, I've been wanting to see for 3 weeks now is going to happen, but it's going to happen in the semifinals. Michigan and Arizona, in my opinion, the top two teams in the country, especially after Duke had its injury problem near the end of the season. That's the game I wanted to see. It's in a semifinal. And then, of course, you've got UConn and Illinois. We could have an all Big Ten final, and we could have a no Big Ten final, right?
Yes. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry. That was a rhetorical question.
Sorry. No, I mean,
I just want you to rubber stamp.
Well, I think the pressure on the Big Ten here, because we won't remember the Big Ten's tournament record. I was tracking that all during the tournament, and I still don't remember what it was last week. I know it's really good. It's like something like 18-7 or something like that, and 19-7. But the pressure to end this national championship drought. They've lost 8 in a row. I'm going to go. I've been meaning to do this, but I keep jumping from show to show.
Yeah, exactly.
Those 8 games that they played the national championship game, I'm wondering how many they were an underdog. Do you remember if Ohio State was an underdog to Florida or not?
You know what? I don't remember that, only because I was there. I helped cover that game. And, I mean, Odin and Conley, they pretty much handled Georgetown, I think, in the semifinal.
They may have been favored in that game.
I think they might have been favored. But, as soon as Mike Conley Jr. went out with 2 fouls in the middle of the first half, everything flipped. If you were betting on that game at like the circa, the way they changed the odds as the game goes on, you probably would have jumped on Florida at that point. But anyway, I know if I remember correctly, it was a very tight window there in terms of the odds. But the bottom line is, the winner of Michigan and Arizona will be the favorite, right, on Monday night, no matter what, right?
I'm pretty sure, and that's why whether it's Illinois or UConn on the other side, the winner of that Arizona-Michigan game is going to be picked to win the national title. I have a piece up at Sporting News. You were probably at a couple of these games that it's the 17th time in the semifinals 2 number 1 teams have played each other.
Yeah,
you've had some good ones over the years, but this might be the best one. I mean, the best one in my lifetime in terms of the score was Michigan and Kentucky in 1993, the game before the timeout game.
Yeah.
They played into overtime. Mashburn, Kentucky fans will still tell you if Mashburn doesn't get into foul trouble, they win that game and go beat North Carolina in the national championship game. So
yeah,
that was an awesome basketball game. There's some other ones on there, like UNLV Indiana 1987, Michigan State Duke in 99. I believe the Ohio State was in that Final Four as well. Those two teams played, and then UConn beat Duke. And that's the thing. I was talking, if my wires are crossing a little bit in the last show I was on with Jim Coyle, Indiana Sports Bulletin. UConn's they're 6-0 in the title game. So if they win, I mean, that's program confidence right there. They'll be right where they want to be.
Boy, are they playing well? That's all I got to know. I mean, they're down, what was it, 15 or 19 or whatever it was, and came back and won that game last weekend. And you're just kind of going, and yeah, it was a miraculous finish. But that's what you have to have sometimes, right? I mean, I covered a bunch of those when I was helping, when I was covering different regionals from year to year. And you just got to have somebody make a basket at the right time or something go crazy with the other team. I called it the boozer choke is what it was. The two Boozer brothers both kind of choked in that realm. The first one should have held onto the basketball and forced him to foul him or whatever, or the second one should have just thrown the ball up for grabs. That was just crazy what happened in that game. But it is what it is now. Dan Hurley is going for another national championship. The insufferable Dan Hurley. Am I right about that? I mean, I think he's misunderstood. Only from I want to talk about this later, but I'll talk about it now. Only from the standpoint he wears everything on his sleeves. I mean, every emotion comes out of him. If you just had the Hurley camera, in a game, you could put it up in the corner. That would be must-see TV, in my opinion, because he reacts and then sometimes overreacts, and sometimes it's the worst call man has ever seen since referees came into vogue. I don't know if the Mayans, when they played those games back in those little coliseums they had where they threw people's heads through rings or whatever it was. I don't know if they had referees or not, but yeah, ever since referees started, I mean, Dan Hurley's gotten the worst of them, right?
Well, I mean, you know what? I don't have a problem with Dan Hurley.
I don't have a problem with him either. I'm just saying
he is worse.
He's theater.
He is definitely. Well, I mean, but we grew up with coaches that were theater. Like, try explaining to somebody that watched college basketball the sideline histrionics of Bob Knight, or Gene Cady, or any of those coaches.
Yeah,
Boeheim used to lose his mind on the sideline. Kay used to lose his mind, and now it's like if they do it, you have this, like, they try to turn it into some conversation, like larger than life psychological conversation. Dan Hurley might be a little bit crazy, and that's okay because he's crazy competitive. And I've probably watched that ending sequence in the Duke game as much as I've watched Dan Hurley's reaction, and it's fine. It's fine. He's good for the game that way. It would. And I read a piece in The Athletic last week about the swearing aspect of it. Like, if you went to UConn and didn't know that Dan Hurley swears like a, what do we call it, sailor? What do you probably have something better?
Former preacher is what I call it. Yeah.
If you didn't know that he talks like that, then that's on you.
Yeah, it's on you.
Right, right. Like, at that point, that's on you.
But you know what? Woody Hayes never said a curse word in the Columbus Dispatch. It was always edited, because society couldn't handle that. Meanwhile, oh my gosh, would he go off on people? But that is what it is. You're exactly right. The thing about it, what stood out at the end of that Duke game, UConn Duke, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is what I've been espousing. It showed how well coached UConn was, meaning their guys did not panic. Their guys picked up the intensity without fouling. They picked up the intensity, and then one guy had the poise to make the shot. He didn't just throw the ball up. He took his time. Braylon took his time. Indiana native took his time and then swished the shot. And that's good coaching right there too, man, as much as anything else. I don't know if you agree.
Well, I mean, a couple things. I've broken this down so many times this week. The first part is Duke should have just let Cameron Boozer get fouled.
Correct.
He was shooting 89% from the free throw line in the tournament. They made
correct.
How many passes was it? 1, 2, 3.
It was one. Talking about with the Duke guys, inbounds, 4. And then throw back to the inbounds guy, and then throw to Caleb Boozer.
Number 4 was the turnover.
Yeah, and that was the turnover. No,
you need to make 1, maybe 2 passes, get fouled, and go home.
Yeah,
go make your free throws, go home. Now,
but
and then
there.
The last part, and you're right, Caravan tosses it to Mullins, and they don't contest the shot. The 3-pointer goes in, and the rest is history. It's completely bizarre on so many levels. So,
Well, not only that, but Caravan understood how much time was left. He got the ball, and suddenly he had 2 guys coming at him. He passed it back to Mullins, and that's what
shot that too.
Yeah, Mullins passed it to him because Caravan had just made a big 3, and he was thinking that's the hot guy,
Yeah, it definitely was an unbelievable sequence. I've been saying all week, I didn't jump out of my chair. I did. I was just staring at the TV like, how did that happen? You know, like it was an unbelievable sequence, like that left you in shock in some ways.
Yeah.
So, and then, they show the Hurley reaction with the ref. Who cares? Like if you're like,
I don't even know what that was.
It was weird.
It was very odd.
Yeah, we don't do that at the end of this podcast, do we, Tim?
No, we don't go head to head. We don't go forehead to forehead.
No, but yeah, it was bizarre. But that's Dan Hurley. He's a little bit bizarre. And if you couldn't figure that out, and you didn't watch the 60 Minutes interview last year, or you haven't heard any of his press conferences, he's a little bit out there. But to me, a little bit out there in a good way.
They replayed that, I think, Sunday night. I think 60 Minutes did that interview. It was. I thought it was really good. By the way, I got Jeff Snook coming on the second half of this show, and because Bill, my good buddy Bill Bender, being maybe Bill, I don't know if you'd agree. You'd probably agree with this. You're as good a parent as you are a reporter and writer, because you take time out for your kids. They're on spring break, and here it is, Easter week, and they've been out all week, right? I know Hilliard schools have been. Have y'all been out all week?
Daughter's been out all week, and it's been like a hotel with friends coming in and out, and that's a good thing. That
somebody else makes your bed.
If you have a daughter that has a lot of friends and a son, my son's out golfing right now, and that's a good way to spend the day. I suppose he got out on the course with a couple of his buddies. They so they're golfing. And then he'll come back and tell me how much better at golf he is than me, and then we go from there. But we balance, it's all about compartmentalizing. As you know, Tim, at Sporting News, I do some women's basketball, some men's basketball, some college football, some NFL. And that's probably where it stops mostly. So this time of year, you have to compartmentalize. If I'm being honest, like college football's, until Tuesday, it's been on the back burner. Now, as soon as they cut down the nets Monday and we're done there, we go NFL draft and college football, and we really get stuff ramped up. I know Ohio State's been going the last couple of weeks. I'm aware of what's going on in spring football. But, spring football, you know that. You've covered it for years. The dynamics of that have changed too.
Oh, yeah. Ohio State's a very interesting spring because they're not trying to find a starting quarterback, for the first time in a couple of years, several years. And but then they are trying to find an offensive line that clicks. I think they've got good possibilities there. I'm going to talk about that a little later in the show. And they've got a couple of, just when you think the wide receiver core at Ohio State with 2 guys transferring, et cetera, out of the receiver room, that and Carnell Tate going to the draft, that might be a little bit shallow. Then all of a sudden, a 3-star recruit, which by the way was underrated, Brock Boyd, becomes the first freshman among the 2026 recruiting class, first freshman at Ohio State to lose his black stripe. This guy is dynamic. He is fast, catches everything you throw to him. He's quick. He's big on YAC, yards after catch. And you got the Devin McEwen kid who transferred in from UT San Antonio. He's another fast, quick, smallish, but fast, quick dude that they haven't had on the team in quite a while, who, once he gets the ball, makes things happen. Got Kyle Parker, the transfer wide receiver from Louisiana State, which also produced Cortez Hankton, Ohio State's new wide receiver coach. As I said on my show the other day, Bill, here we go. How are they going to fill those? How are they going to fill those big shoes of Brian Hartline? Hang on one second. And I go, Well, check out Cortez Hankton. He's got some pretty big shoes too, man. Having coached at Georgia and LSU and having played in the league, I mean, he brings quite the repertoire in terms of coaching a resume. So it's been an interesting spring so far. Maybe I'll get into that a little bit later. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll run out of time. But I wanted to get you on this. You know, you saw where Alabama's athletic director, Byrne, what's his first name? Greg Byrne. He said maybe the time has come to do away with the conference championship game, which, of course, the Southeastern Conference started way back in 1992, and Alabama won the first one against Florida. Became a little bit of a, a small but still substantial cash cow for the Southeastern Conference and the teams involved. But if college football goes to the 16 tournament in a couple of years, or I don't know why people keep talking about the 24 team possibility of college football playoff, because I don't think anybody's advocating that except the Big Ten. But that's important because the Big Ten and SEC hold final sway on how it finally will look. But nobody in the SEC, I don't think, is advocating a 24 team tournament. But would you be okay if the conference championship games, at least for the Power Four, went away?
Yeah, I think they should. I think I'm looking at it from the SEC standpoint of, think about Georgia right now. Georgia's won the last two SEC championships. They didn't win a playoff game. They get the quarterfinal round. They lose the year before to Notre Dame. They lose this year to Ole Miss. And if you're Georgia, you could say, well, too bad. You got to play. No, you play an extra game that's hard. 2 years ago, They lost their quarterback, Carson Beck. Ohio State could argue, would you have rather played Indiana in a Big Ten championship game, or would you have rather not played that game and got a swing at them in the semifinals or something?
Right.
If they were Miami, think about how that stage is a little bit different. If Ohio State and Indiana haven't played yet, they're both undefeated and
still ranked 1-2.
One less game. I know the thing that I always hear, and I'm sure you hear too, well, how are they going to recoup that money? Well, here's an easy idea. Put more games on campus. The game I keep pointing to, Ohio State games are different. Like, their atmosphere with the Miami game, whatever, that's going to sell out. But when you look at the Orange Bowl that had Texas Tech and Oregon, sparsely populated Orange Bowl, because that game would have been so much better had it been in Lubbock. Texas Tech, I'm not saying they would have won the game, but it would have been more exciting.
It would have been a packed house.
You bring the Hurricanes up to Columbus the second week of the playoff and see if that game's a little bit different. Of course, it would have been a little bit different. So
it would have been colder.
It'd been a little bit colder for them. Or put the Buckeyes, let's say, if the seeding were different, if the Buckeyes had to go down to Hard Rock Stadium and play. I want to see those games. So I would rather see an extra round on campus with 16 teams. So you have 8 total games on campus, and then we can do the semifinals and the college football Super Bowl, wherever you want to do it. Than a conference championship game. I just don't get as excited. I know players and coaches can always sell it. You get a trophy for, winning the conference and having the importance of that. I understand that. And it's a banner and all that. But you and I grew up with the Big Ten where they didn't have one, and it was fine.
Correct.
It was fine. Granted, most years it was Michigan, Ohio State. One of them would win it, or sometimes there were complicated 3-way ties, where there was a year where Wisconsin went to the Rose Bowl or something, where there was a weird tie with Ohio State, even though Ohio State beat them on I believe it was a Marlon Kerner blocked field goal. Did Wisconsin go to the Rose Bowl that year? I think.
Dude, don't mess with my brain like that. I mean, I could remember this if you gave me 10 minutes, but no, there was a time, when Northwestern went to the Rose Bowl and didn't play Ohio State.
That's the
for
one.
example, in Gary Barnett years at Northwestern.
But in this environment, that's fine.
Yeah,
because you'll go to the playoff anyway.
Ohio State had a 9-game regular season in 1968 and played either 6 or 7 conference games. I can't remember. And that was when the Big Ten was 10 members. I mean, this idea that you're ever going to get equity. But I do like the fact, if you got a 16-team conference like the SEC and an 18-team conference so far like the Big Ten, and you don't come close to playing everybody, I do like I do like settling things. I do like the idea of settling things because you could have 4 or 5 teams tie, when you think about it, because they don't come close to playing everybody. So, I mean, if you're going to call yourself a conference, if you just go without a conference championship game, it's more like a confederation of states, meaning we all have common interests, but we're going to be independent, otherwise, et cetera. And I don't like that idea, because what separated all these conference teams from Notre Dame in the past was Notre Dame isn't in the conference, can't win a conference championship game, and what's the difference in them and playing a team from the SEC that didn't win its conference, but it won, maybe it went 9-0 this year, and by ipso facto won its conference, but that's no different than Notre Dame being an independent and going 12-0. So, I guess that's my only, one of my few gripes about it. The main thing is, though, the idea of making or not making the college football playoff from a financial standpoint is changing in 2027. I do believe the Big Ten and the SEC are going to get something like 53% of the revenue of the contract for the college football playoffs, no matter how many of their teams make the playoffs. And then it trickles down to the ACC and then the Big 12 and you know what I mean? So they get smaller shares of that largesse of whatever the money pot's going to be. And then a very small part will go to the other 6 is what I call them. I forgot what they call them. And then you got Notre Dame getting a certain amount. Meanwhile, UConn, I just read a story about this today. I think it was Ross Dellinger wrote it about UConn. In that contract's only going to make something like $450,000. It's an independent in football, just like Notre Dame is. And meanwhile, there are 2 college basketball teams, women and men, are going to make upwards of $10 to $12 million for getting this far into their tournament. So it's really, we're in a strange time, man. I was talking to Bo Bishop on his show this morning, and I said the problem with college sports always has been and will continue to be the fact that everybody is selfish in whatever form, whether you be a team that won't change your home date to accommodate a night football game, right on up to the conferences, the SEC and Big Ten demanding and commanding the lion's share of the proceeds of the college football playoff. And you can say, well, they provide the inventory for the college football playoff, but that you're not really looking out for everybody else if you're the SEC and the Big Ten when you do things like that. I mean, we're never, this is like cats. This is like a bunch of cats deciding on what they're going to have for lunch.
Cats? Did you say cats?
Yeah, because cats are very independent.
Oh, ours is, for sure.
Unless there's a big kill out on the savannah and they all dive in there and they try to run each other off.
Ours, my wife was working, Holy Week. She works for the Catholic Church. She was working late last night, and I was in the other room, and heard a neighborhood cat came to the window, and our indoor cat was not having it.
Man,
he was not having it. There was the hissing and the smacking at the window and all that. But anyway, if the cats are, if we're making this analogy and sticking with it, the SEC and the Big Ten I think it's only going to get worse. And I hate to say it that way. I think they're only going to ask for more. I don't think we'll get to a point where the SEC and the Big Ten are going to create their own super league yet, but I wouldn't rule it out. Because,
maybe.
I mean, down the line, I wouldn't rule it out where there's just like, did you say a confederation, something like that?
Confederation of states.
Whatever. Yeah, a confederation of FBS schools that have the advantages that the other ones don't.
We know how that went when somebody called themselves a confederacy long ago.
Did not work well for them.
Didn't work out, but it took 4 years for it to go away.
But anyway, I was going to say, you look at the NCAA tournament as an example, Tim. The SEC had a good record, not a great record. They just had the wrong set of teams in. You looked at the second weekend once Florida went down, and you saw that Alabama and Tennessee were going to have to go through Michigan. That wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. Got to play them sometime.
Texas lost, obviously. And then who am I missing? They had a fourth. Arkansas. Arkansas did not play well against Arizona. They ran into the buzzsaw there. The Big Ten's had a tremendous tournament, and the SEC had a tremendous tournament last year. And these two conferences have the revenue. They have the advantages. One of the things I've been told a lot, I was talking to Mike DeCourcy about this. You're not going to see coaches leave the SEC or the Big Ten to go to the ACC or the Big 12.
Correct.
Not in football and men's basketball, not with the advantages that you have being in those conferences. So,
correct.
To your point with your conversation with Bo, I only think it's going to get worse. And I think
I do too. That was my point.
Yeah.
And really Notre Dame has kind of pigeonholed itself now, because if Notre Dame does decide, I know they got their NBC contract and blah, 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 but if Notre Dame does decide to join a conference, they've only got two choices. I mean, you're not going to go, the whole thing would have to be rearranged. The deck chairs would have to be rearranged and agreed to by the Big Ten and the SEC for like those shares of the college football playoff bounty to be changed. And so Notre Dame's pretty much pigeonholed into joining one of the two elite conferences, if in fact they get to that. The fact that Notre Dame has its own seat at the table will continue and always will bother me. I mean, what makes Notre Dame so damn special? You answer that for me, Bill. Go ahead. You got 5 seconds.
No, you're not going to get me.
No, you have 5 seconds to think of the answer.
Catholic school kid on Easter weekend, you're not going to get me to say anything bad, too bad. Other than, I always put it this way. If somebody gave all those things to you, why wouldn't you? You would take them too. If somebody said, we're going to give you NBC, your own TV deal, okay, we're going to give you playoff access until those things change.
Yes.
Until they don't have their TV deal with NBC, until they don't have, or Peacock or wherever you have to find it anymore, until they don't have a 5-game arrangement that the ACC gave them.
Yes.
Oh, if somebody's offered you that, are you going to take it? Yes.
Yeah.
And until they don't have playoff access, which they kind of fixed with the snub last year. For the record, I think they should have been in last year.
I do. Oh, I do too.
Over Alabama. That's who I
over Alabama.
There's no question. But
we're in agreement.
Until those things are gone, they're going to keep doing that. I always say too, there were very few things that were good about COVID, if any. One of them was that season we got to see Notre Dame play in the ACC as a full member, and it was awesome. They got to the conference championship game. They made the playoff. So what was wrong with it? They split 2 memorable games with Clemson, get to the playoff, and that's what it would have been like. I've always wanted Notre Dame to be in the Big Ten, and that's selfish. Again, Catholic school kid, Ohio would be.
They almost were.
And they should be, because it's more fun. The Notre Dame games I remember outside of Catholics versus convicts and the Florida State game in '93. The most memorable Notre Dame games are always against Michigan, Ohio State, and Michigan State. Sometimes Purdue, not very rarely Purdue, but sometimes Purdue.
Back in the '60s, Purdue was a pretty good game.
Yeah, every Ohio State game's been memorable for me.
Yeah,
a lot of the Michigan games have been memorable. You produced some really great moments.
Well, you remember when Rockne? You don't remember this, but when Newt Rockne was there, they wanted to be in a conference, and no conference wanted them. They were this upstart from northwest or northwest Indiana and stuff. And then, of course, in the Big Ten was in the 90s, late 90s, whenever it was, when the Big Ten made them an offer, and they accepted. But then the alumni raised such a rancor about it, they then declined it. So, I can understand having a rock in your shoe about what happened way back in the 19 teens and 20s. But then when you finally come to your senses and join a conference, and then your alumni don't want it. But the problem with that, they're in a conference in every other sport. So
there's uneasy relationship with like Michigan, for example, because of the way that those two canceled that series, and it was done very abruptly. And there's always been angst with Ohio State. I know, because Notre Dame hasn't beat Ohio State in my lifetime.
Yeah.
You have to go a long way back to find one of those, and they haven't played very often, and they just still haven't all of those games, the 2 home and homes, the bowl games, and then the CFP championship game have not gone Notre Dame's way. So, but yeah, I still love the program. I still love Marcus Freeman, what he does there. I think they, I like Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman.
I just don't like them having the same kind of sway in the college football playoff discussion as an entire conference. That's what I don't like. They are not that special. Is my point.
I agree. And again, the SEC and the Big Ten still, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are going to continue to drive that.
Yes.
There was there was some back and forth. I know a smaller news item this week, the Big 12, apparently Texas Tech was pitching a fit about playing on a Friday night game. And Brett Yormark said, that's what's going to happen. Like, Brett, good for him. He kind of put his foot down. That said, there are certain states, and we're one of them here in Ohio, where whenever Ohio State would play a Friday night game, I would just, why?
Yeah.
Fridays are for high school football. They should, and that's college. That's college football's fault as much as anything.
Yeah.
Because I know the Ohio high school football traditions, just like I know Georgia, Texas, PA, wherever. And of course, we all say we have the best high school football. But the point is, it's high school football night. Let it be high school football night. And that's on college football a little bit. I don't like going to a high school game, for example. I'll go to a St. Charles football game. And, but I'll be like pulling up my phone. Like, I remember this very distinctly last year, looking at like Virginia and Florida State. I'm like, why am I having to track this and go home?
Because
Virginia actually won that game that night.
Because for you to be able to afford, lacrosse and you got to have a job. That's why you're paying attention to it.
But I don't want to be tracking the Florida State Virginia game on Friday night. Much like Ohio State fans that are sitting out at all of these, you have to. OHSA is not going to like it if that starts happening, because then you see some of these schools move their games around. It's a logistical nightmare. Just let
it wouldn't be every. But here's the thing: it wouldn't be every Friday night that Ohio State would be playing. You know what I mean?
One.
Yeah. Some of these schools, they want to be on Friday night because it gives them a window that they don't get on a Saturday when there's 4,000 games going on. I understand that too. I mean, like I said, it's all about greed, brother. It's all about selfishness, is what it all comes down to. But let's at least have some guardrails around the selfishness. You can be selfish to a point. I'm with you. Texas Friday Night Lights is sacred. I mean, Odessa Midland, right there, that's, it's only what, 2.5 hours from Lubbock, for example, right. All around Lubbock, the panhandle of the Texas is big time Friday Night Lights territory. So I can understand Texas Tech being upset. By the way, I know you got to go. So I want to do one thing before you go. I videotaped, video recorded, our good buddy Clay Hall's prediction for the Final Four. So I want to jam that in here real quick. Then I want to get yours so you can get the heck out of here, okay?
We have come down to the final 2 rungs on the ladder here in the big dance, the semifinals. Final Four weekend, and it's UConn against the Big Ten member Illinois. Wow. Can I really pick against UConn after that incredible escape against the Blue Devils? No, I am not. I am picking UConn to advance. They will play the winner, of course, of Arizona and Michigan. I have said from the outset, Michigan would win the national championship. Do I side with Charles Barkley right now and call this the Arizona Invitational because the Cats are so good and North Carolina might want their head coach? No, I don't. I see Michigan beating UConn for the title, and Dusty May makes his way to Chapel Hill. Timmy, there you go, baby. That's what I got for you.
The last one was a knockout blow. That was a knockout blow. What do you think about those picks?
I think you should get in the ring with Clay and we can watch
that. That would be must-see TV.
You got the reach on him, don't you?
Oh, I think
you don't want to
I got the reach. Yeah. I got the reach. I've got the guile. I've got the smarts. I mean,
he might get up on you though, and then you'd be in trouble.
One uppercut and one uppercut and I'm done, man. Glass jaw. I've got like more like uncooked spaghetti jaw. But real quick, what's your pick? And you get out of here, brother.
I got same one. I think UConn beats Illinois. It's gonna be a tough game. Terrace Reed, Alex Caravan, that senior experience that they have pays off. Illinois is playing really well defensively, though. I think that's going to be kind of the fist fight of the night. They play to like 65, 70 points, something like that.
Yeah.
I got UConn winning that one. And then I got Michigan beating Arizona, but it's a tough pick. That's a toss-up. They're both playing really well. It won't surprise me either way. And then I got Michigan beating UConn. What he said, though, Clay said about Dusty leaving for Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
I do think North Carolina is going to get one of Tommy Lloyd or Dusty May.
Interesting.
It's just a matter. Well, and I would, if I'm Dusty May, I don't, like I said, are you really going to leave the Big Ten for the ACC? So how about North Carolina and Michigan? Michigan's got plenty of resources too. North Carolina, the expectations. You're still operating under the shadow of Dean Smith. I mean, he could coach at Michigan for the next 10 years and he'll be fine. He's not going anywhere. Could do what John Beilein did. So I would say I would more likely that Tommy Lloyd would leave. And maybe the loser leaves. Who knows? But Michigan, UConn, Michigan breaks that on Monday evening at like 11:45. And but if UConn wins, that's 3 and 4 years, and you're going to start to hear some goat talk around Dan Hurley and all that sideline behavior. But I mean, you can't ignore 3 and 4. Yeah.
I mean, he's a personality. Here's what you have to say about Dan Hurley. He's a personality. And of the two Hurley brothers you thought would really rise, the point guard, the fabulous point guard for Duke during their reign of terror in the NCAA, he just got finally relieved of his duties as the Arizona State head coach, right? I mean,
correct.
Now you got Dan Hurley. If he gets Bobby Hurley on his staff, wow, that would be very interesting. Yeah, you're right. But you know what? You don't know what are those chimes that are going off in Dusty May's heart? By the way, no relation, but with the exception of where he's coaching now, because I know it would bring rancor among the ranks of my friends if I was kin to him. But the bottom line is, you don't sell a May short, I think, is what I would like to say about it. But the bottom line is, has he always dreamed of maybe coaching on Tobacco Road, especially North Carolina? I guess we're going to find out in a week or two, right?
One of those guys. I mean, North Carolina would have hired somebody by now, because if both of those guys say no, then they end up with somebody like who I think is a fine candidate is Vanderbilt's Mark Byington. Again, I sound hypocritical because he's coaching in the SEC, but Vanderbilt to North Carolina is a little bit different. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country right now between the last 4 years between Vanderbilt and James Madison. So keep an eye on him.
Wow.
And keep an eye on the other name that's popping up, Billy Donovan. I think the Bulls thing is over. The NBA thing probably over. And we know he can coach in college basketball. And I know it's been a long time, but Rick Pitino did the same thing. So Billy Donovan would be fine if he returned back to college basketball.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Bill Bender. I'd hire him anytime. He'd be number one on my list. He'd be on my call list. And I think he just ran down the board there of maybe the order of which North Carolina is going to seek its successor to Hubert Davis. I mean, but boy, the expectations, that in Michigan, if you win a national championship at Michigan, boy, you've really done something. But in North Carolina, just like Ohio State football, it's expected that you compete. So with that said, Bill Bender, enjoy the Final Four and anything else you're doing this weekend, my friend.
Hey, have a great weekend. Have a happy Easter. And Tim will get back at it maybe next week, and we'll go from there, man. Appreciate you. You got it, brother. Man, do I enjoy having Bill Bender on, one of my favorite people of all times. But life moves on. I'm going to have Jeff Snook up here in a minute as soon as I make communication with him. You never know where Jeff Snook is from one week to the next. He's on a cruise. He's on the west coast of Florida. He's on the east coast of Florida. He's making deals. He's doing his taxes, which I think takes him 2-3 weeks. I'm just joking. But very much enjoy having him on.
But also, Ohio State spring football has gone on and it keeps going on. And the end of this past week, Thursday of this week, we got to talk to a couple of coaches and a couple of players, but I wanted to play a couple of the coaches' comments. First, James Laurinaitis, Ohio State, obviously megastar linebacker back in the day, former NFL linebacker, but linebackers coach. And specifically, I want to play him talking about Christian Allegro, the transfer linebacker, massive transfer linebacker from Wisconsin. And you got to remember, Ohio State had the need, losing Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese in one fell swoop to the NFL draft is big. Those were your two starters last year. But really that room, with them leaving, you got Peyton Pierce, who played substantially last year, but that room is bereft pretty much of experience behind Peyton Pierce. Some guys did play a little last year, but bringing in a Christian Allegro, who wore, by the way, the number 0 for Wisconsin, and Luke Fickell, meaning he was considered to be an example of what Wisconsin football should be about, of leadership, of exemplary effort, both on and off the field. And so he wanted to jump into the portal, as he said, when he transferred to Ohio State, or as he said the other day, just wanted a chance to play for this kind of program, an elite program that has a chance to play for a national championship again this coming year. You got to figure, barring massive injuries. But you got to remember, when Ohio State played at Wisconsin last year, Allegro played, obviously, and you'll hear James Laurinaitis talk about, laying eyes on him, et cetera, and just thinking, wow, that's a linebacker. Guy's a big dude. But you got to remember, Allegro, I'm going to say that you got to remember 4 times before I'd never say it again. Allegro suffered a broken arm in that game, making a tackle on Bo Jackson. And he kind of played with it and then went to the sideline and pretty much got it massively taped up. And I think finished the game, if I remember correctly. But that just tells you a lot of what you need to know about why Ohio State was very interested in adding Christian Allegro to its roster from the transfer portal. So let's get to what James Laurinaitis had to say about that.
Oh, I never played with a broken arm. I played with a broken rib. I did not play with a broken arm. My rib actually still sticks out, Bill, right here. I can't lay on my stomach because my rib sticks out still. But
for Christian to do that against you guys, notice that mentioned that. How impressed are you that he was able to play?
Yeah, I think I watched, when I caught wind that Christian was going to get into the portal, I honestly was like, okay, I'm going to watch 2 games. I'll watch Alabama. I'll watch them against us, because I know what our guys are at tight end. I knew what Will Kazmarek, what he was like as a blocker. And to see him with the club on in that game, fighting and the toughness. I honestly noticed his size, like on the field. I was like, gosh, 0 over there is a big son of a gun. And just thought there was like a veteran, like we're very talented, but we're young and green. So there's like a veteran. I've been in big games before. I've played the top opponents before, and the scene isn't too big. Not to say that it will be for the other guys, but you just don't know. And so it's another guy to bring in the room, I think, and just compete for playing time just like everybody else. And I tell the guys every day, like, your practice reps will determine how many guys that we will play and rotate. And that's reality. I hope it's 5 or 6, or it can be 2. It honestly just depends on how they prepare and really how they perform.
What are your impressions of how he's done?
He's done really well. I think I think all the new guys are just trying to find their way in the new culture and how Ohio State does things. And I truly believe that we are different from other programs, the way we challenge our guys and the culture that, Ryan has here with Coach Day of like, hey, we're going to fight to be the best version of ourselves. Like, that is not easy. Like, you are going to be challenged and you are expected to be uncomfortable every single day because you grow when you're uncomfortable. And I think he's really bought into it. And he's been everything that we expected and brought him in.
Very interesting, because this guy, he's going to play. I mean, he's going to play extensively. Obviously, Riley Pettijohn, one of the 2 guys I really had penciled in as maybe being starting linebackers when the season rolls around. Riley Pettijohn's having to miss the spring because of, recovering from surgery injury he had at the end of the year last year. And he's there. He's just not taking part in drills, et cetera. And, when you're not taking part in drills, nobody forgets about you, but you're all about, in any kind of sport, you're all about what you did today, not what you did yesterday or last year, et cetera. So, but bringing in Christian Allegro boosted the depth chart immensely in that room by just one guy. Because, obviously Ohio State plays a lot, most of the time with only two linebackers, depending on who they're playing. Obviously, Peyton Pierce played a lot last year when he went to the three linebacker look. But it'll be interesting to see where that goes, because Allegro is an impressive young man. Let me just leave it at that. And then you look over at the tight end room, and Keenan Bailey, who's basically the co-offensive coordinator. He was elevated to that position. I mean, make no mistake, Arthur Smith is running the show in the offensive meeting room. But Keenan Williams, who started really just almost as a gopher in this program back in the previous decade and has risen through the ranks, immediately got the allegiance of head coach Ryan Day. And Ryan Day has rewarded him continually from year to year to where now Keenan Williams, I think, is making $1 million or more a season, but he's also the offensive co-coordinator. That's always been said wrong. It's the offensive co-coordinator instead of co-offensive coordinator. I guess you can say any way you want to, whatever floats your boat. But the bottom line is he's done a hell of a job with the tight ends room over the last several years. But he makes an interesting point, or he made an interesting point the other day about what the expectations are of that tight end room now. When you look at the fact that Will Kazmarek and Max Clare likely are both going to be drafted in the NFL draft coming up the end of the month. And, you'll hear the point he makes about that, which sets Ohio State apart. Both of those guys transferred in, obviously, earlier. Kazmarek from Ohio University a couple of years ago, and then Max Clare transferred in for the 2025 season last year from Purdue. Well, this year they've got a couple of transfers in Mason Williams from Ohio and then Hunter Welsing from Northwestern. They join a room that appears to be led, at least on paper at the moment, by Nate Roberts and Bennett Christian, two holdovers from last year. You remember Nate Roberts, as Keenan made the point, Nate Roberts, his first play ever as a Buckeye was at the fullback position, leading the ISO on the first touchdown Ohio State scored against Texas last year in that big win against Texas. So, but anyway, they're both back. So it gives them at least a 4-man possible rotation there, depending on how things go, because Bennett Christian has had some big moments off and on, including a couple of years ago catching Julian Sayen's first touchdown pass as a collegian. But the bottom line is it just goes to show how even the tight end room maybe has more depth than a lot of people give it credit for. I mean, they had 3, sometimes 4 tight ends on the field a year ago in certain situations. So let's hear what Keenan Bailey just had to say about that, in essence, phenomenon.
Yeah, I think Nate's standard is just like the other guys in the room, Andy. Like, I'm not going to recruit someone who their expectation is not to be the best in the country, period. And, for a while it was just, you just say that and it goes one ear out the other. We're the only program in the nation that'll have 2 tight ends drafted next month. Like, the expectation is to come here, be the best tight end in the country, be the best tight end room in the country, right? And then go on and play in the NFL. And that's really hard. Like, really hard. I told the guys the other day, everyone just says, okay, then we go to the NFL. There's only 140 NFL tight ends in the world. In the world. Like, there's a couple hundred congressmen. Like, there's thousands of Navy SEALs. Like, what we're trying to get to is really, really hard, and that's why they chose Ohio State. So whether it's Nate or Max or Bennett or Mason Hunter added into the picture, like, the expectation is to be the best at what you do.
Good point, especially the stats he threw out there about number of tight ends in the National Football League compared to Navy SEALs. That's crazy, but it is what it is. And we're looking forward to going to Student Appreciation Day on Saturday at Ohio State. It's only open to students and accredited media. I like to say in that term, accredited media. But you get to see a lot more because we're going to, until the spring game, we're going to get to see as much, quote, scrimmaging, end quote, as we've seen all spring, because obviously we've only gotten to watch the beginnings of 2 practices. They keep everything under the tight and under the vest or inside the vest, however you put on your vest at the Ohio State University when it comes to football. But I'm very much looking forward to that. Oh my goodness. Look who just jumped in to my DMs, into my timeline, into my StreamYard hookup, Yardstream. Is it Yardstream or StreamYard? StreamYard hookup, the incomparable Jeff Snook. Not to be last and least, but Jeff Snook, welcome once again to the Tim May Show, my friend.
Thank you, Tim. And that incomparable only goes before Script, Ohio.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. He's big on ramp. He's big on the spread. He's big on taking all-inclusive vacations and cruises, but I digress. Jeff, you know why I got you on? I'm going to have you on every week, but I want to first touch bases with you. We're going to talk about mock drafts and how they're kind of all over the board, at least when it comes to Buckeyes. And we're going to talk about whether Kirk Cousins being signed by the Las Vegas Raiders. Kirk Cousins, he might be the 4th or 5th richest NFL player in history once he's done. What do you think? I mean, it could be, right? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, I looked it up yesterday, actually. I think he's got over $240 million in NFL career earnings, something like that. Not bad for a kid out of Michigan State that was, not a top pick of the draft way back when. He's bounced around. He's been with the Redskins / Commanders, the Vikings, the Falcons, and now the Raiders. And I'll tell you what, his agent has done a heck of a job over the years making him a rich young man. And Kirk Cousins has
guaranteed money. Most of it.
It's really a good deal for the Raiders. I think they're not paying him much this year. I looked at that contract, like $9 million of it's coming from the Falcons, and they're throwing in a couple million, and it's essentially a 1 to 3 year deal at the Raiders' discretion. And who better to mentor Fernando Mendoza than Kirk Cousins? And say if Mendoza's not quite ready yet coming out of camp, he's capable of starting and winning games too. So I think the Raiders usually don't do things very wisely, but that was a wise move to get Kirk Cousins.
Well, how about when the Falcons got him though, and then he turned around and drafted Michael Penix Jr. I mean,
no sense.
It made
sense.
I
remember watching that thing Peyton Manning produces called Quarterback, and Kirk Cousins was completely shocked because that was after that they signed him. They took Penix, and that shows him watching the draft. He could not believe they took him. But
correct. So it's the National Football League. It's kind of like the way the Packers waited till near the end of the first round and took Aaron Rodgers. Who did they take? Who followed Aaron Rodgers? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Bottom line is, what are you doing? Yeah,
it took Jordan Love. Well, the Packers have done it.
Jordan Love.
Think about what they did. When they had Favre all those years, they got him for a second-round pick from the Falcons when Jerry Glanville was with the Falcons. Didn't like him. They get him for a second-round pick. He wins the Super Bowl. He's NFL MVP, et cetera, et cetera. Then they take Aaron Rodgers, I believe, 22nd in that draft, which shocked Favre. And they didn't get along, and he set him behind him, and Favre treated him like crap, let's face it. How about a smooth transition then? When Favre moves on to the Vikings, Aaron Rodgers becomes an MVP. And then, the same thing with Jordan Love. That really ticked off Aaron Rodgers. They draft Jordan Love, and now he's poised to become a great NFL quarterback. I mean, nobody's done it better than the Packers. And every time they took a first-round quarterback, they were questioned, and it always worked out right for them. So. Unlike the Browns.
Amen. Look at the opposite. Imagine the opposite of that, and then you have the Browns. I want to get into we've already covered that. So, but I do want to get into the mock drafts and how they've been changing for the Buckeyes, or everybody's got a mock draft. I won't get into that right now. We'll do that at the end because I want to talk about the NCAA Final Four coming up, some props some prop bets that maybe you like and wagers you like in that, and ultimately who you like to win the semis and then the finals. My previous two guests on here today, I don't know if guests, I mean, Clay Hall's a part of the show, but he's not on Fridays, but I taped him. He's picking Michigan overall to win it all, and Bill Bender of the Sporting News picking Michigan to win it all overall. I want to get to where you get to there, but also in the semis. But I want to talk about how these mock drafts are kind of all over the board right now when it comes to Buckeyes, where they go, et cetera. And as I always say, you got to be different from the other guy, in your mock draft, or why are you doing it? So, so it'd be, I just want to get your take on some of that. But first, let's get into the NCAA Final Four. Number one, let's do this at the top. Who do you have advancing from the semifinals, which you have Michigan, Arizona, the game?
I've gone back and forth all week. There's a reason these point spreads are 1.5 and 2 points, because these games are coin flip games. So, you look at the seeding. Illinois is seeded below UConn, yet they're a 2-point favorite. And what the odds makers have done is they've looked at it, who is playing the best throughout the tournament, and obviously Michigan is. So before the tournament would have started, Arizona would have been favored over Michigan in a meeting. But because Michigan has just been blowing people out of the water, and Arizona trailed Purdue by 8 points. So I think they were down 41-33. Those are factors in point spread. So Arizona looked beatable through those first 28 minutes against Purdue. They looked beatable. And all of a sudden they turned it on and became the Arizona that we know that they can play great defense, clamp down on people. So that's why Michigan's favored, because they just look better and better. That point spread is now 1.5. And I'm telling you, they could get, it could go either way. Michigan's hotter. Michigan's the hottest team in the country. The matchup of the big guys with Ade Amara against Arizona's front line is really going to be intriguing to see who wins that matchup. And, I'm going to go with Arizona in that game. It's a good coaching matchup. I love Dusty May, as you know, because I've always talked about him. But
let me interrupt because of his last name, right?
Last name. That joke's getting old. But I'm going to go with Arizona. I still think when you watch Michigan, the Big Ten tournament, they played 3 average ball games.
That's a long time ago.
And I know it is, but so's last weekend. So I think Arizona's been the most consistent team in the country from beginning to end this year. And I'm going to go with them to pull a slight upset and beat Michigan. The other side of the bracket, I'm going to go with UConn. I'm going to ride that momentum of Danny Hurley having a week to prepare. Nobody's better at it. He's won 17 out of 18, I think, NCAA tournament games, which is remarkable.
Yes.
And 2 titles back-to-back, runner-up. And now there's something about that kid. I mean, I call him a kid, but, he's a left-hander from Seton Hall that remember him playing. Boy, what a coach, though. I mean, he gets the max out of them. And X and O wise on the sidelines, the way they trap when they need to, the way they move the ball, they're never out of it. I mean, they were down 19 points the other day, and they know they can come back and turn it on and play as well as anybody in the country.
Hey, real quick, can I interject something? I thought, as an example of how good a coach he is the poise that they had in the final seconds of that win over Duke, where they didn't panic. Duke did panic. And then I thought everything about those last 10 seconds was great preparatory coaching by a guy who once they got into the heat of the game where the game was decided, they kept their poise, kept their aggression, etc. I thought that was as much an example of great coaching as almost anything. What's your take on that? I told Bill Bender that also.
Obviously, I mean, it was good. Once the kid missed the free throw, now they're down by 2. But UConn made a mistake. They made a mistake. They were supposed to foul that one when they had the trap and didn't get the ball on the second pass. They were supposed to foul that guy, and they had a mental block and didn't do it. And that would have cost them the ball game. They end up getting lucky.
That's true.
Where the Boozer kid didn't get the ball over the 2 defenders near midcourt. And, one of the things I wonder if Shire told them coming out of that was, you don't need to advance the ball to the front court. We have 10 seconds left in the game. We can play the 10 seconds out in the back court. And if you have to pass it backwards, pass it backwards. And I wonder, I'd really like to know if that was said, because they didn't have to. There's no reason to go to the front court. Now, you got two guys wide open, but you got to get it over those guys. And even if you throw just a big looping hook shot up in the air just to get it across midcourt, the time's going to run out. But, after it's all said and done, it's easy to nitpick and second guess this thing, but there's no reason to throw it forward. They could have gone backwards to Cameron, to his brother.
Just held the ball. Held the ball and forced a foul.
Hold the ball and let him foul. But you always risk get tied up, though. Now, you get 2-on-1. You don't.
That's true. That's true.
He's not a big kid. And I don't know who had the possession arrow. That's a good question. But you always risk that tie up when you got 2-on-1. All they got to do is reach in, grab the ball, and you got a tie up. And if they had the possession, now if Duke had the possession arrow, that'd be the thing to do. But I don't remember who had the possession arrow. But
I don't either. But I just remember all the people. I just remember all the critics said that they should have just held the ball, which I would think if you're going to make that comment, then you have to know that they had the possession arrow in their favor. But who knows? Bottom line is they did panic in one form or fashion, and that's that. Now you've got UConn over Illinois. You've got Arizona over Michigan. What you're saying in a nutshell, and this is I don't know what nut has this kind of shell. What you're saying is the Big Ten will go home without playing for the national championship.
Yeah,
Are you sure you want to say that?
Tim, I'm not convinced of either one of these enough to put a lot of money on either one. That's why they're coin flip games. Either one of these any one of these four teams could not only win the semifinal, any one of the four could win the championship. And you don't always look at the Final Four that way. There's always a fourth pick in the Final Four that said, well, they're still 800-1. That's not the case now. This is really, really even, and it's going to be an intriguing Final Four. And have you looked at the handle? Have you looked at the handle? Is it generating more action? I've not seen any handle. Final Four is always a huge betting event right behind the Super Bowl. So no, I am not. I watched the lines from the time they were put out on Sunday to see how they fluctuated, and they've only moved a half point this way, a half point that way, and they go back and forth. So one of my best bets is I love the Arizona Michigan under 157.5. I think for two defensive teams like this, that is a big, big number. 157.5. So, you got a 78 game, you're right on it. That's a lot of points and Michigan scored a lot of points in the tournament, but they haven't faced an Arizona defense yet. So that's one bet that jumped out at me to go under, thinking it'll be a close game. Both teams have had a week to prepare their defenses, who they're going to double, who they're going to trap, all those type of things. And I know what they're going to try to take away Axel Lindenberg. And if they can take him away, limit his touches, and once he gets it, double him, have him give it up. Now the other guy's got to shoot threes. I'm sure that'll be their game plan. So you got Michigan's other players, and they're going to have to step up and hit wide open shots because they're not going to let that kid beat them. Yeah.
I like Mara in the middle, though, having the advantage over the Arizona big kid. I want to ask you this. That's just my take. So, what other prop are you looking at heavily in the Arizona Michigan game?
You teed me up. I followed Mara's over under points this whole tournament, and they fluctuated anywhere between 11.5 and 14.5. He's 13.5 for this game. I like him under.
Wow.
Watching them play, I've got burned on this a couple of times betting his over. He had 11 the other day. His over under is 12.5. I had him over, and he got fouled over the back with about 4 minutes left, and the referee called a foul on him. He stood up and threw his hands up in the air, and it was one of the worst calls I've ever seen. He would have been going to the line to shoot a 1-on-1. He's a great free throw shooter. But you know what I noticed? He's never he gets his points. He's never an option. He's never an option for them unless it's an alley-oop or a lob. That's the only time, and that's a breakdown play. They're not designing that. It's a breakdown play when a guard sees him or a forward sees he's got position, inside position. They'll lob it to him, and they got a little signal they use, or basically head nods or whatever. They don't use him as an option. He's setting high picks all the time for their perimeter players, and then he'll roll
real
the
high
basket.
Picks.
But he's rolling to the basket in a rebound roll, not in an option roll. So if that's why he's only scored 10 and 11 and 12 points this tournament, he's not a first, second, or third option. Once in a while when he's down the blocks, he'll make a move, but then they'll be doubling him and he kicks it out. He's a great rebounder, but he's not an option scoring wise. All the points he gets are scrap points. They're alley oops, they're rebounds, they're scrap points, and so I'm going under in that 13.5 against Arizona's big men. And there's been games this year, not against Ohio State, of course. He had 27 against them once. There's been games this year where he had 6, 7, 8, 9 points, and they're all scrap points.
Okay, let me jump right in there real quick. I think he's got to score minimum. I'm going to say minimum 15 and possibly upwards of 17 to 18 for them to beat Arizona. So I'm going to go with him over.
Well, bear in mind, they've won all these tournament games without that happening.
Correct.
He has not come near them. So,
correct, because they didn't need him to.
Well, his rebound numbers his rebound numbers are 7.5, and I don't think he's had 8 rebounds or more in the whole tournament.
I see him as giving them an advantage on the inside from a scoring standpoint in this particular game, is what I'm saying.
Bear in mind, the last 2 games he's played less than 20 minutes both games.
Correct.
You wouldn't have known that, right?
Correct.
I mean, he played 17 minutes against Alabama, and I think he played 18 minutes.
Don't wear the big man out, baby. Keep the Sequoia. Keep the Sequoia healthy.
But you know what? He gets winded. So when Alabama ran the pace they do, he had his hands on his knees, and they had to bring him out. And then he had 2 fouls, but he didn't play much.
In the biggest game of the college basketball season, which I call this one that, I think the next one, no matter who wins, Michigan and Arizona, I think the next one, this is the collision. The next one will be a lesser than, because this is the collision I've been waiting to see for several months now. Now, give me one other prop that you like in that Michigan Arizona game, or is that pretty much it?
No, I'm going to take Yaxel over 17.5. I love that kid.
Oh, yeah.
He's a Big Ten Player of the Year. Like I said, they're going to focus on it, but 17.5 is not a big number for a guy that averages 22 a game.
Correct.
And he just has a habit of, when they need points, that he can break somebody down off the dribble. He can back up and pop a 3. He's an excellent free throw shooter. He's a ball player. I mean, he's an NBA player.
Yeah.
So you can double him. You can double him all you want. He's going to get points off transition, and he'll be the best. I think he's the best player on the floor. Matter of fact, I think he's the best player in the Final Four. I love the kid. Okay. I mean, he's just a great basketball player. So 17.5 with him. I like the over on that. That doesn't mean the outcome, though. That doesn't really relate to the outcome. It just means that I think he'll get his points.
Okay, UConn, Illinois. Give me 2 props there that you've looked at that intrigue you. The over-under what is the over-under in that, by the way?
The over-under is 130. What is it? 134 or 5.
Wow.
That's 2 good defenses.
I got to go over on that. on that.
That's a low number. And remember, they're playing in a dome now. The shooting is always different. The background's different. I'd probably go over on that. I'd probably rely on Hurley. So if you divide that up, Illinois' total, I think, would be 69. I might go under that if that's what it is. I can't remember if it's 69 and it would be 68, 67, I believe. So I'd probably go under their number and think you get in a real tight defensive game, but I'm not convicted. All I know is whoever wins Arizona, Michigan is going to be anywhere, depending on how the other game goes, anywhere from a 4 to 7 point favorite on Monday night. If Michigan blows out Arizona, or wins by double digits, they'll be even bigger than that. It might be a 6 to 10 points.
Yeah, and they don't really throw props out there, obviously, a game away, right? Meaning,
no, absolutely not. You don't know if the kid's going to.
Yeah, you don't know who's playing.
You don't know if a kid's going to get hurt Saturday night. They don't.
I find this to be intriguing, an intriguing Final Four. Do you kind of alluded to that a little bit earlier? Do you? Because I think you could take either team in either one of the semifinals and kind of feel anxious about it. Maybe there'll be a little anxiety, but they have a shot at winning. anybody has a shot at winning, but you understand what I'm talking about. That I don't think anybody's in over their head in these semifinals. Agreed?
No, not at all. I mean, the fact that Illinois is a lower seed and still favored over UConn tells you all you need to know. I mean, to me, the only way this Final Four would have been better if Florida would have made it all the way through, where you have Florida, UConn, Michigan, Arizona, which I think are probably the four best teams. I hate to leave it. I'm leaving out Iowa State, but boy, they laid an egg. So down the stretch, and they lost their best player 3 minutes into the tournament. So I give them an excuse.
Yeah.
But if Joshua Jefferson was playing, I'd still think they would have been there, just because the way they play defense. But no,
I agreed with your. Really, I like your pick in that regard.
Well, by the way, remember you busted me for picking Florida, but I went back and looked, and I think Florida was picked to win the title as much as anybody, including Arizona, by pundits, so-called pundits. They were the hottest team coming in, and I had them at 7-2 odds to win it. And I do have Michigan, by the way. No, I had them at 7-1. I do have Michigan, by the way, at 7-2. So I got a futures bet on Michigan, and Lord knows, here I am. Where I went to school, and I bet on Michigan to win it all. So I'll be happy to lose that money.
Hey, but the thing is, like I pointed out, I saw SEC basketball being slightly overrated, just like their football was in the fall. That's why I didn't see Florida doing what you thought it would do. That's the only reason. I thought that league. I didn't think that league was on par with the Big Ten, for example. I thought Arizona was this just unicorn out there that was out in the West that was going to play well. And, UConn and Duke playing to go to the Final Four. Now, that was a toss-up game to me. And what showed me a lot was the way UConn obviously came from behind in that game in a ridiculous manner and then made the shot. But, I didn't like Florida getting to the Final Four just because of what I just said. So that was me.
Did you say that on the air, or are you saying that now? I can't remember.
I've said it on the air. I said it on I think I said it on 97.1 The Fan, and I think I said it on our podcast. One thing I thought the SEC. I didn't think the SEC was as good as it was last year. I'm talking about the upper echelon of the SEC. I didn't think Florida was an elite team. I thought it was a really good team. Is what I think of what I said, or something like that. And if I didn't, I'm going to go back. If I did, I'm going to go back to that podcast, take it down, reword it, and then put it back up. So anyway,
I saw him play
that's the right I have.
A couple games this year when I saw him, including a couple games against Kentucky. I thought they could beat the worst NBA team. That's how good I thought they were.
Against Kentucky.
That's line. And, bear in mind, they're coming off a championship. So that front line is tremendous. But boy, Iowa, I'd still like to go back and watch that breakdown of the Iowa game, which I didn't see every play of it. But that you talk about an upset, I just didn't think they matched up well at all.
Yeah, you said Kentucky, right? That was your barometer. That was not a good barometer for anybody this year to judge how good their teams were.
I saw them play a dozen times, but a team like Kentucky and Rupp Arena, and they go on a run, and they're leading 47-28 at the half in Rupp Arena. Just took it to them like they were an elementary team. I mean, just really
not a great Kentucky team is what I'm trying to say.
No,
hey, that's all I'm saying. I wouldn't use that as you can beat anybody. You can beat anybody on their home floor when you're a better team than they are. So that's the way I leave it. Hey, real quick. The mock drafts, what jumps out at you most in terms of the Buckeyes? Obviously, everybody still has, even with the I haven't seen any different this morning or today, even with Fernando Mendoza, I haven't seen anything different about him, despite the fact the Raiders have signed Kirk Cousins or are going to sign Kirk Cousins. What jumps out at you that just really grabs your attention? I think it's just mock draft guys trying to get your attention. What is your take on the Buckeyes and the mock drafts in a nutshell?
Well,
as we speak today,
everywhere. I mean, I've seen 6 or 8 mock drafts. They're all different. So it's not a given that the Jets are going to take Arvell Reese at number 2. That'll be the domino that falls. And then where Sonny Style goes, where Tate goes. I've seen Tate projected to go to 4 teams. including the Browns. That's the most common one. The Browns might pass on him to take an offensive tackle. The kid out of Georgia grades really high, where now he's replaced the kid out of Utah as the top tackle that's going to go. And, and then where Caleb Downs goes. Caleb Downs, all those rumors about a knee injury that are probably false rumors, I think, and where he could go anywhere. He could go anywhere from 6 to 12. So, Florida State set the record with 4 picks in the top 14. I believe it was the 97 draft. They had 4 picks in the top 14. Ohio State's going to beat that. The big question is, are they going to have 4 in the top 10 or 4 in the top 12, whatever it is? I think they're going to have 4 in the top 14, and they'll surpass Florida State's record. But I don't see any of those guys, Tate, Downs. The 2 linebackers are going to go, obviously, in the top 10.
Yeah.
I don't see Tate or Downs slipping past 12. So, they're going to have 4.
I saw one mock draft had Tate. I saw one mock draft having Tate go to the Browns. Would you welcome that, being a longtime Browns backer?
Well, that's been the original mock draft for when they started doing mock drafts. That Tate would be that 6th pick, and now I see some things that differ on that, where he could slip down to the Saints, who might take another Ohio State receiver, and the Browns might take a tackle instead. The Browns' 2 needs are overwhelming: offensive tackle, wide receiver. So I can almost guarantee at 6 and 24, they're going to have 1 at one and 1 at the other. And now this kid from USC, the receiver, there's a lot I've seen a mock draft for the Browns taking him instead of Tate.
That would be a mistake.
The big kid.
Makai Lemon.
Yeah, right. And, I'd definitely take Tate.
Winner.
I've seen more of Tate to take him, but I would take Tate over him at that position.
I would too.
If I was the Browns, I would take Carnell Tate, get it over with, come back, get a tackle at 24. Either that or make a deal for another pick, because their needs are so heavy at both. They need 2 receivers going into this draft. So later on they're going to take another one. So,
dude, isn't it amazing?
I sort of follow what they do. But go ahead, Tim. You and
I've discussed this many times, screaming at each other, either at dinner or hanging out at your cabin up on up by Mansfield, et cetera, when you're in this neck of the woods. But isn't it amazing how NFL teams who have months, sometimes years, when it comes to judging the talent, get it so wrong so many times? Isn't that amazing to you?
I've said it for years that general managers, vice presidents, people in charge of personnel, even head coaches, they're not rocket scientists. They make more mistakes. They miss more than they hit. No, they really do.
Yeah.
Look at the first and second round. The first round, they miss more than they hit, especially with quarterbacks, because they reach.
Yeah.
And instead of a lot of them reach for needs instead of taking the best available player. And I always thought that was a bad philosophy to always draft to your needs. Well, then you're always going to have a need. If you draft the best available player every time, in 4 years, you shouldn't have a need, because you've already taken the best available player if you hit. But you watch these teams over and over again, and a lot of times, as soon as the pick is made, I'll give you an example. The Vikings took, I think, J.J. McCarthy at 11 2 years ago, and I'm watching that thinking, and this, I'm not saying this because it's the Ohio State Michigan thing. I just saw enough of him to know, what are they thinking? This guy, an NFL quarterback? I see a lot of those picks, and they're not. I don't mean to pinpoint and zero in on them, but man, I could have predicted this kid's not going to be an NFL quarterback. It's too obvious, and so and I've obviously been wrong on a few, but you just no, they're not rocket scientists. They fall in love with a guy, like I said, John Dorsey taking Baker number 1 when he could have had Saquon and Josh Allen in that backfield. We've talked about that. It's just these guys they're not always the smartest men in the room, even though they think they are.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end on that note, because Jeff Snook and I agree on something, and I'm going to leave it at that, because I don't ever like leaving any kind of either dinner, hanging out with him, or a podcast with me screaming at him and him screaming at me. Actually, He never does scream. He just acts like he's the all-seeing, all-knowing guy in the room.
I don't
and I'm
scream
supposed to
back.
acquiesce.
I don't scream back at you when you scream at me. I let you go, make a fool out of yourself. Just listen.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. I'm deaf in one ear because it comes in at 50% volume, and and I just let you go because I know you get it out of your system, and I just let you scream a little bit, make a fool out of yourself, and play along.
That's Jeff Snook, ladies and gentlemen. I call as my family knows him as my good buddy Jeff Snook. That's his full name, my good buddy Jeff Snook. Hey Jeff, thanks for joining me again. I'll see you next week, brother.
You're welcome, Tim. You have a good weekend, and it's good to be on the show again.
And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you again on Monday. Ohio State's moved its practices up from Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The last 2 weeks of spring ball, and obviously they play the spring game on April the 18th. But a little bit of a shake up there in terms of the schedule. So I'll be talking about some of the things I got to talk about with players or coaches from Ohio State's Monday practice. Just I keep telling everybody, if you don't want to hear a lot of Ohio State football talk, you're listening to the wrong podcast, number one. And number two, I keep reminding you, Ohio State's one of the elite teams in the country. We're not wasting your time talking about Ohio State football if you care about college football. So until Monday, speaking for my good buddy, Jeff Snook, I think Clay Hall will be back on us on Monday. He's a little erstwhile right now. But until Monday, I'll see you then.